2018, New York Times bestseller James Clear published his book, Atomic Habits. I'm not sure if you read it or if you've heard of it, but it's really a good read. And the book talks about, basically, it's entitled Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. What James Clear argued in that book is that small, consistent changes, like building good habits and breaking bad ones, can lead to remarkable results over time. The book focuses on 4 key steps for creating good habits. If you read the book, you remember these, or if you haven't, then this is not a spoiler alert. It's just to give you an idea of these 4 key steps that he covered in the book. And that is, the first step is called what he calls the cue or the trigger. In this step, it talks about identifying the trigger that prompts the desired behavior. What is the trigger that prompts the desired behavior? And then the next step, he talks about the craving, or make the habit appealing and associate that habit with a positive emotion or reward. The third step, he talks about how to perform the desired behavior consistently. He calls that the response. Once you've identified the behavior that you want to work on, he says you have to consistently perform that. And then the fourth step, he talks about the reward, how you celebrate your success and you reinforce the habit loop. Now, what he offers in the book as well is strategies for breaking bad habits. So, for example, the bad habit is, and I call this a habit for a reason, as you'll hear in this video, the idea of work-life balance. So many people struggle with that, including myself. And I'm sure you have at some point either identified with that phrase because you've seen it in your own life where you're saying, man, I just don't have balance in my life. And maybe you've heard that from your spouse, your wife, who have said to you, you've got to find balance. She may not have said it in those words, or your children. They may not have used that word or those words, but somehow they're advocating for, they're pushing for, they're hoping for, they're praying for some kind of balance in their lives, because dad, husband, he's not available as often as they would like. He is just not there for whatever reason. And here's what I know the reason is for you. You are actually going after this idea, this vision, this dream that you know that when you accomplish that dream, everybody wins, everybody benefits, and you're doing it for them. Your heart is in the right place, but they're seeing it as there's not enough balance in your life, husband, dad, and they're somehow looking for that. So he would call that then a bad habit, right? It's something that we are consistently doing that's impacting in a negative way our loved ones. So he talks about then how to replace those with good habits, and how to do that. We have to make the bad habits unattractive. He emphasizes the importance of building what he calls systems and creating an environment or an ecosystem, your surrounding, that supports your your new desired behaviors. Now, here are 4 key takeaways, and I'm going to step away from this in a few moments to share about this one idea, this one habit that's changing my life. And you can almost right now begin to imagine what that is, but I'll tell you in a few moments what that I'm working on. The 4 takeaways are this: that small changes compounded over time. So he simply says every tiny improvements can lead to significant results in the long run. Isn't that sometimes where we get stuck? Because we think about trying to make some changes, but we're discounting them as too small or insignificant or not big enough. But what he talks about and advocates for in the book is that small changes, tiny changes, they compound over time and they lead to significant results. Second takeaway is that you focus on the system, not the goal. Focus on the system, not the goal. And what he says is that you create a system that supports your desired habits, and the goals will naturally follow. The third takeaway is that habits are compound interest of self-improvement, right? It's compound interest here again. And what he says is consistent incremental progress is key to lasting change. Consistent incremental progress is key to lasting change. This is an area that I've struggled with myself because I want this big thing. I want this big leap. I want to just kind of get everything right away. And maybe you're the same. We want to kind of this gigantic leap to get there right away. He's arguing that, listen, no, because most times we end up with nothing. We end up not getting there wherever there was. However, if we had done what he suggests, the consistent incremental progress and small, tiny habit change, behavioral change, we would have gotten there. And then the fourth takeaway is make the good habits obvious and the bad habits invisible. Invisible. And what he means by that is that you're going to design your environment, your surroundings to support your desired behavior. Quick example: if you are struggling, your bad behavior, say it's alcohol or say smoking, for example, and you want to kind of create new habits, good habits, he would say one of those ways to create an environment that would support your new behavior would be to remove from around you any semblance of cigarettes or nicotine or alcohol. Take that out of your surroundings. And then he would say, then make the good habits obvious. So what is it that you're trying to do that's obvious as a good habit? Well, you want to then create appetite for something that you want to drink other than alcohol that you can now focus on and make that visible. Make sure it's well pronounced in your surroundings. So your eyes see it often. You hear things around you that speak about that good habit often. That is a way he suggests that you can go about creating these new habits. So imagine then, as I work on, like I mentioned before, the one habit that's changing my life is this idea of priorities. Priorities. It's begin to say, well, Kingsley, priorities, how is that a habit? Well, as he said, is to focus on that one thing. So in the area of priorities for me is, again, we call about work-life balance. What does it look like? And so maybe it is for me, and not maybe, for me, it is faith, family, and financial resources. So for me, then is how do I prioritize this habit of focusing on faith as an example, right? So for me, it's spending time reading God's word, it's spending time praying, really making that a habit of that one thing first. Establish that first. Don't try to do 3 or 4 habits at the same time. So I want to build on that faith because everything for me stems from my faith. It informs me. It helps me to know what to do in certain situations. And so this book is very helpful in that regards. And if you're struggling with this area of work-life balance or whatever it is you want to do, we want to be able then to recognize that there is a way to go about doing that. So here is a dilemma that I faced I faced. And so I've really kind of, I'm breaking through that, as I mentioned before. And that is the common belief that when I prioritize my family and my faith, it means I'm going to have to sacrifice my business success or pursuit. And so that's a conflict that tend to have been where it led to, if you listen to or watch my last video about putting God first, which you can see right here, I talk about the idea of making the kingdom of God first and foremost in our lives. And so if I'm going to then prioritize faith and family, somehow it means that in some people's minds, I cannot also do business success or financial success, admit that also a very, ongoing thing. We see it as an either or. So what I want to call this is, under this idea, is the illusion of trade-offs. The illusion of trade-offs. Because we sometimes, for the most part, a lot of people, maybe you, and I know this is something I'm still working through, I'm better at it today, but it's either or mentality, right? Where it means that if I'm going to pursue one thing, it means I'm going to neglect something, right? It's either this or that. But the question is, why can't there be both? Why can't it be this and that. And this is where the idea of work-life balance comes in. How do I balance those things? What would that look like? And so for that to happen, I have to then step away from the either or mentality and then look at how could I do both and make sure both get the attention they need in a very adequate manner. And so we have to also look at it can't be all. It can't be this idea of perfection, because sometimes perfection is what keeps us from that, because we feel as if we don't do 100% over here, we can't do much over here. If we can do, here's it, we just have so much time and so much energy available to us. Remember, even in the life of Jesus on earth, he was, God in the flesh, but yet he was limited by his time and physical ability or availability. He was limited to those things. He could not do everything on earth when he was here, because he subjected himself to time, space, and location like we are, so he could identify with us. So even Jesus could not do those things, but he allocated time for faith. He would go off early in the morning to pray to his Father, allocate time for people. He would spend time with the people, feeding, healing, teaching with people, and family. He would spend time with family. So Jesus allocated time, and it wasn't an either or for him. It was both and. How could he do those things? And so it had to be good time management. And I think I may do a video on that at some time in the near future. But a time management, as you enter then in this new year, this new season you find yourself in, then my friend, wouldn't it be also true that you, by shifting away from the either or mentality, that you could actually prioritize faith and family and business, right? So Kinsley, how can you prioritize all three? Well, obviously you can't do all three at the same time. It means time allocation. It means being a good budget or a good steward of your time and energy, because nobody's asking you to be Superman as you think they're asking you to be. So there's an illusion of trade-offs that's happening. The second point I want to highlight is shifting priorities shifts results, right? Shifting priorities, shifting results. Now, again, my last video, right, as I mentioned earlier, about the seek God first is a kingdom first principle or mentality. When you begin to practice God's will and put that as a priority, first and foremost, then everything else falls into line, because God would help us to establish or achieve our success and achieve in those other areas as well, because he promises that when we put him first, he's faithful to his word and he will do the things he have said he would do. So when you prioritize your faith or your relationship with God, then that begins to be the stepping stone or the cornerstone for everything else. Because when you do that, you're going to find that your decision making is improved. You're going to find that your stress is reduced, because God's going to help you to reduce that. It's increased motivation, because again, the peace of mind, the peace in your home, less strain on your relationship with your wife and your children. Those things increases your margins, right? And so you're able then to function in a better place. And so you also lower your guilt and your resentment and whatever other emotions that are keeping you back. So the shift in your priorities shifts your results, okay? And your work-life balance will fall in place very quickly. The third idea I want to share with you is how building a balanced surrounding, a balanced ecosystem, a balanced environment. And I mentioned as an example about the alcohol. So if you're going to build a system or a surrounding or a environment that helps to give you a winning opportunity, then maybe you may have to establish your working station and assign certain time frames where you're going to be in your working station, and other times where you're going to be someplace else, and whatever you may want to come up with. But it's finding a way to build a balanced surroundings or ecosystem or environment, because this is how some people who we look upon, we heard about, we read about, we admire in some ways, one way or the other, have done that. For example, when we think of people who are successful today, who prioritize their faith, we think of, what comes to my mind, my first person that came to my mind was the founder of Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A's founder, Truett Cathy, of course, he's deceased now, but his faith informed him how he should run his business. One of the most successful business in the world today, or especially in the United States, is not around the world, but in the United States is very big. And one of the most successful business is Chick-fil-A. They do not open on Sunday. His belief is that on Sunday was a day of worship, and his people should go to church, whether they go or not. He wants to make sure they have opportunities and no excuse not to go. Chick-fil-A, up until today, do not open on Sunday because of that reason. Only open 6 days a week, but they're doing their business is more profitable than many of those who are open 7 days a week. So it was founded on Christian principles. Mary Kay Ash from Mary Kay Cosmetics. Again, she used Christian principles to run her business. How successful worldwide that business has become. You think of this, right? Blake McCoskey may never heard his name, but he's the founder of Tom's TOMS shoes, and it's a worldwide known shoes. How successful his business has become. People have emulated and tried to replicate his the work systems he have in place for his employees and so on, and how he treat his customers. Again, because it's from a Christian perspective. You know, David and Barbara Green, founders of Hobby Lobby, incredible company, also open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturdays, no Sundays. Same reasons like Chick-fil-A. But what have these people have in common? A work-life balance, but it's founded on this one habit of making faith the central cornerstone of everything that they do. And that's why I say this one thing is changing my life, meaning that as I focus on my faith, and as I'm inviting you to do the same, you also experience what these many successful people have done. Sam Walton, founder of Walmart. Dave Ramsey, founder of the Financial Peace University. These are people who are world-renowned, named people, but what they do have in common is what I'm advocating and preaching and talking about right here. So when you are going to set a work-life balance, my friend, and if you're going to make this year a year where that becomes a new habit, and you, as James Clear says, you begin to focus on that consistently and make that a very important part of your life, I guarantee you also will experience success. I'm going to come back and report to you, right, at the end of this year. I'm going to report to you how, as I integrate biblical principles and faith in my life and my business, and to make that a priority, what difference it has made. So I'm putting that out there right now, and you're going to probably see this video or a video in the future that documented what happened for me, because I'm going to come back and I'm guaranteeing you it's going to become where you're going to look back and compare this video with the video of the future that I'm going to create that explains and give a testimony that this thing does work. This thing does work. So I want to remind you then again of what James Clear have said about his Atomic Habits book, about the idea, as I mentioned here, about the illusion of trade-offs, that we need to then attack that. That's a trade-off. We have to do either or. No, my friend. So we want to then do both, and we want to shift our priorities. And when we shift our priorities, there is shift in results as well. And then also building a balanced surrounding. I would love to hear from you. What surroundings have you changed, or how are you changing your surrounding? What are you doing that's different? I would love to hear your story, and I would love to have even one day maybe interview you and have you on to this video, this platform, either my podcast at happymarriagesecrets.com. You can hear my podcast there. You may be on the podcast as a guest, or even here on this channel as a guest to hear your story. But I'd love for you to start with a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've just listened to. Do you see things the way I'm seeing things? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Is there any other person that comes to mind who have successfully made faith a priority, as I am advocating here in this video? I'd love to hear from you. If you think of someone I didn't mention, I'd love to hear a brief story of them, and to make sure you comment below and let me know about the person who have made their Christian faith a priority. And it, from all indication, there's a work-life balance that was there for them to have long-term relationship, because most of these people I mentioned have long-term marriages, many of them until they die. What has made the difference? Because they integrated biblical principles into their lives, into their business, into their families, and that's what made the difference. So I want you if you know of someone that I didn't mention, please put their name in the comments below or any other question you may have. If you want to contact me and ask me any question directly, or even talk about being on the podcast as a guest, please DM me, send me a direct message in my Instagram at Kings of Grant, or you can comment below here, and I can do a follow up with you, maybe offline somewhere. But let me know, just connect with me somehow so we can begin this conversation. So, my friend, I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I want to challenge you to make this year a year where you're going to make your faith a priority and begin with take one small thing, one small tiny habit, as James Clear says. And if you want to share that with me, I would love to hear what is it you're going to work on, and love to hear your story. So, my friend, thank you for taking the time to listen, and make sure you watch this next video right here, because again, I referenced that earlier on. I think it's worth watching. Okay. With that said, my friend, thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. God bless you. And I'll see you real soon as I continue to bring you content on this channel. God bless.